Okay, so we're talking about self-storage, and in the interest of disclosure, I don't have nearly as many self-storage properties as I do apartment buildings and manufactured housing. So I have three or four. Um, and it is self-storage is a good thing to have, I think, because um, it of all of the things we buy, um, self-storage, people are always going to need places to store their stuff. And so self-storage is kind of resistant to economic downturns, and investors tend to like them. So they are easy to get funded. So we're going to kind of go ahead and get going. And they're easy to get funded from banks because you can get good terms. Of all of the kinds of properties I buy, self-storage has a very low, kind of delinquency rate. So it's less than 3-4% nationally. Now I haven't looked at the numbers in the past year or so, um, but lenders tend to like them, investors tend to like them. Um, so there's a lot of reasons why they are why people tend to gravitate toward them. You can easily get an 80% loan, putting 20% down, as opposed to apartments and manufactured housing where 75% is not uncommon at all, especially with manufactured housing. Okay. Um, there are always places people want to have a place to store things. And so it's fairly easy to keep them rented as long as you pay attention to the competition. There are a lot of things you can do to add income streams to self-storage. So anything from kind of like propane to selling insurance for your stuff, to setting up where people can make copies and stuff like that. There's a lot of ways to add income streams. Expenses are low. So of all of the things we buy, the expenses tend to be the lowest. And so they run 25, 30%, 35%. And so that's a nice thing. They are also good for a mix with other kinds of properties. So if you get into a market area that you like, a way to increase your footprint in any of these areas is if you have an apartment building, for instance, you can add more apartment buildings, you can add a manufactured housing, you can add a self-storage building. So you can, if you are buying more than one kind of asset, you can have more available to look at to increase your footprint in an area. All right, so that's why self-storage. So there's some downsides to it too. And one of the biggest ones is that unlike manufactured housing and apartments, which are multifamily, self-storage is a business. And you have to really pay attention to business interests. So for example, if you have to be paying attention every week, every 2 weeks to what other self-storage operators are offering, because there is no customer loyalty basically in this business. So you have to stay competitive, and that means you really need to know what other people are doing, and you have to keep your prices similar or slightly lower than your competition to keep things filled up a lot of times. All right, they are also fairly easily overbuilt in a market. They are not expensive to build of all of these. And so it's fairly easy for them for an area to get overbuilt. So you have to pay attention when you're buying as to where your competition is. Most people don't want to travel more than 3 to 5 miles or so to get to to be able to get to their belongings. They frequently people will store things there that they don't use that often. And so they want to be able to go back and forth to those things. Which now means, so the ones that are probably the easiest or the least inexpensive, the most inexpensive to buy are those that are in more outlying areas. So things that are built on the edge of things. But you have to keep in mind again that people don't want to travel to get to their stuff. And one of the things that they're most concerned about is the safety of their belongings, that you have good security. And if something is out a ways, people can get concerned or you can have to travel a ways. So when we go looking for self-storage, we look for things that are in or around residential areas, apartments, houses, townhouses, things like that, or that are near small businesses where they may want to store some things. And if you are going to find something to buy in an outlying area, then you're going to have to make sure that your prices are below what things closer in are, right? So when you go looking to find things, a lot of what you're doing is really looking at the competition and what their occupancy is and what they offer, etc. The other thing is that whether we like it or not, self-storage is not a necessity. People would like to be able to have a place where they can put their stuff, but it isn't really necessary. And so, again, you have to sort of understand that when you hit economic bad times, some of these units may go vacant. And on the other hand, some of them fill up when people lose a house or they have to move or do something else into a smaller area. So it is really, again, about the competition. We just talked about you have to be careful about where you buy so that there isn't a lot of competition right around where you are. You also don't want, if you can avoid it, self-storage that is off on a less traveled road. They're a lot easier to rent if it's on a busy street that has a high traffic count every day. People drive by it and see it, and and a lot of times they will just drive in and see what it looks like, right? Okay, so what are some of the downsides of all of these? Because they're a fairly desirable asset, then they tend to be more expensive than the other things we buy. So you still are seeing cap rates, not so much 5 right now, but 6 cap rates, 7 cap rates are pretty common. Even when the cost of money is at 7.5, 7.5, 8 right now and up. So finding a good deal that works is not so easy. While there are a lot of value adds, little things you can add to your income, most of them don't add very much. So there isn't a lot of high value adds that you can do that really increases your income. there's a number of things you can do that are that do a little bit, and every little bit helps. Okay. It's because they're expensive, it's harder to get investors the rate of return they want. On the other side of that is that a lot of times you find investors satisfied with a lesser rate of return with self-storage than they would be with manufactured housing or apartments. But when you go to find your investors, they're easier to find because people like self-storage. But when you're really talking about savvy investors, they're all about return on their investment, and you're just not going to get as great a return on investment. Okay. Because they're harder to raise rents. But again, this is a business. And so you have to pay attention to what the competition is doing. And because the cost of a storage unit per month is really not very much compared to an apartment building or a manufactured housing, is that raising the locker rent by $5 a month doesn't, for instance, doesn't have a lot of impact on your net operating income. And so it takes a lot longer to really have an impact on your increasing the value of your property. All right, so some of the keys to making a self-storage property successful, right, is that you have to have a good sales system in place. So you have to be advertising, you have to have things out there. So where you can get in apartment buildings and manufactured housing, you can do a little bit of marketing. In self-storage, you really need to be, you have a higher percent of your expenses linked to marketing because you really are in a competition business. And we already talked about that. You have to know what they're doing every week. Okay. You have to have a website. Most of the profitable self-storage properties. All right, well, let me kind of just back up here for 1 minute. So with apartments and manufactured housing, you don't have to have really huge properties to begin to start making an impact. You can start with 5 or 6 units, something like that, and hire a property management company to lease things, etc. In self-storage, you really need, for you to be able to have employees, at least some of the time, you need a larger property. So in self-storage, we're probably talking 200, 250 doors, and not really small ones. If you want to have some part-time employees that can be there to rent things. But there are an awful lot of self-storage properties that aren't as big. So those that aren't as big, what is critical is that you have an interactive website where people can go on the website and they can rent a locker right online, which tends to mean you have a schematic of what the self-storage property looks like. So you have kind of and people can see the size and which ones are vacant. And they can click on it and rent it. So what you have to have the contracts there that people can download and sign. Then you have to have, most of the good ones are going to have individual gate codes that are attached to your, to the locker that you rented. And it is, so you do that online too. You have a payment option so people can pay online, and you're going to set it up on auto pay. most of the time. And people have, once they have, put in their credit card and everything copacetic, they get a gate code, right? Some sites will have ways where you can, they can rent locks, or buy locks, buy insurance online. So getting those locks, a lot of times inside the self-storage, there is another kind of a locker that will have some of these locks in them, and people will get a code and can pick up a lock. Otherwise, you tell people that what they need to bring with them. You have to have good security. That means you have to have good lights all around. You have to have cameras. You have to have good fencing, where people cannot kind of get in easily. So there is a lot of business related things that you have to have set up for your self-storage properties. What is key to somebody renting is that people have to perceive that their belongings are safe and you have good security for them to be able to want to rent from you. Okay, so what do we look for in these kind of properties? I'm going to look for an area where there's limited competition in the market. And remember, we're talking 3 to 5 miles on a busy road. And there aren't a lot of other self-storage properties around. So I have to really pay a lot of attention and due diligence to the competition, and the number of households, the road it's on with a traffic count, etc. The Self-Storage Association, for its members, has a number of pretty neat tools. So they will be able to tell you, for example, on some of the busy roads, what that traffic count is on those roads. They can tell you how many people or businesses are in the area that would be available to rent. They also can tell you the saturation, how many other self-storage properties are in the general area. So the Self-Storage Association, if you're going to get serious about buying self-storage, you're going to want to join this and make use of some of their materials. I know you said the market is generally 1 to 3 miles. I said 3 to 5, but the closer people are, the happier they're going to be. You want to look for something, like we always do, that's selling below the current market price. What you can't do, now you can buy a self-storage property that is distressed, but know before you're really going to be able to successfully rent a lot of these, you're going to have to make sure that you have good cameras, that you have a good website up, that you have good fencing, all of those things we talked about for people to want to move their stuff in. We look for potential value adds. So are there other things that we can add? Are there things that you could put in an office for other income streams? Is there extra land to build every other self-storage buildings, etc.? And we already just talked about the location, either near apartments or small businesses, etc., etc. Okay. Here is some more. What do we look for? We said 2 to 300. Now you can go lower. We just talked about that, but then you have to make sure that those other parameters are met, because you're not going to have enough income in those smaller properties to be able to afford staff. It's only when you get up to the larger properties that you have enough income coming in to be able to hire somebody part-time. You want a mix of unit sizes, with more of them larger than small. So a lot of the older self-storage properties have a lot of small storage, like 6x8s, things like that. They don't rent so well. A way to get around that is to do a twofer. So you can have a special where you rent two smaller units for the price of one. And so that people um, can you can overcome the problem of having two small units. So you would like to see some barrier to entry so that, for instance, in a lot of suburbia, there is really built up and there aren't a lot of vacant lots and stuff where you can build other self-storage, where you can build self-storage, or it's not zoned for commercial. You don't see so much burned out landlords, but that's always something we look for. And we talked about, we generally don't like things that are out of town unless you know that your prices are going to be lower. Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about with self-storage, and we'll open it up for some questions here in a minute. This one you've all seen before. We have a webinar that goes into more information on everything that's included in our classes, and what you may get there. What we are able to do in these Teaching Tuesdays is just sort of hit the highlights. For example, we've just spent 15-20 minutes on self-storage, and yet there is a module on self-storage in the passive cash flow for life that's close to 2 hours, right? But go take a look at the webinar. If you want to just see our website, you can go to passivecashflowforlife.com. If you have questions, send us an email at support@passivecashflowforlife. And as usual, these Teaching Tuesdays go up on our YouTube channel, generally by Thursday or Friday, that you can.
Nichole? Did we lose her? Let's give her a minute to
Yeah, I can't hear
I
it
can't
either.
hear either.
yeah. All right, while we're waiting, let me let's see. Give everybody a link. This will come up here. All right, so here is that. Not yet. So this is the link that she has up there, or she had up there. This is the actual long link. It's a little bit easier to remember, but you can just cut and paste it. And usually, maybe I've got missed a letter there. Usually it will actually let you just click on it, so you don't have to cut and paste or copy it. Let's see if we can do it this way. There it is. So right now you can just click on it. I'll give you the email address if you guys need anything at any time to do with multifamily. Feel free to reach out. Let's see. There's 2 email addresses for you. Here's support email and my personal email, and then we keep an eye out for in case she comes back. And then the last thing is I'll give you the YouTube channel. If you missed part of this, came in late, or just want a refresher, you can actually go to the YouTube channel. There's a ton of stuff on there. All the different Teaching Tuesdays we've done are up there on a playlist, so you can kind of start anywhere you want and kind of work your way through it. There's a ton of good information. What's nice about it too is that usually we get a lot of questions from people on the calls. So a lot of times that may be something we haven't covered. during the presentation, so you can learn a lot just from other people asking questions. And there is that. Oh, there she is. All right, hold on. She's joining. There she is. You with us? Nicole? You're on mute, Nicole.
There we go. I said I was apologizing for the internet here. So I'm going to, was about through with what I was going to talk about. So I will hand it back over to you, James, and then we'll take some questions. And if I lose connection again, hopefully this is going to be the last week. I'm flying home tomorrow, so. All right, so what did you want to talk about? Do you want me to I don't have I'm not sharing screen anymore, right?
No, but I can have you share the screen again.
Now,
It's
I'm
set up
turning
to
it
share the
back over
screen.
to you. You wanted to
Okay.
do something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys the website, so you can take a look at it and get more information. This is definitely not get rich quick. This is get rich slow, but provide for your family and your family's family and create wealth. But if you're looking to make, a quick 20 grand, 30 grand in 30 days or something like that, this is definitely not for you. You can make a lot of money, but it takes time and it takes effort and it takes work. All right, let me get in here and here we go. So when you get to the website, when you go to passivecashflowforlife.com, it actually gives you an overview of everything that's involved in the course, and it's pretty in depth. And then if you'd like to register, there's a little button there you just click on. It is 30-day money back guarantee, obviously. And then obviously anytime you have questions and stuff like that, you can reach out to me. We set up a strategy call trying to achieve your goals, and then kind of take it from there. But there's everything in here. I mean, everything from soup to nuts, all the way from just getting ready, finding your market, how to pay for your deals, how to fund. Some of these are pretty expensive, so we teach you how to actually find other people to help you, how to analyze deals. We got some forms in there. We have a spreadsheet that allows you to underwrite any deal that you have. Buying self-storage, here's one of the modules right here. Buying small multifamily, if you want to do that, or if you want to buy mobile home parks or manufactured home parks, there's specific individual modules for that. And then everything else you pretty much need to know. How do you analyze a property once you've actually got a contract on it to make sure that what you're getting and the seller has told you are all correct. And then closing, how to do that. And then probably one of the most important things is actually how to manage the property manager. We don't manage any of our own properties. We actually have property managers at each of them, and then that are hired, even though we pay for them, by the property management company. And then we manage the property management company, which we encourage everybody to do. But at the end of the day, it's totally up to you. But if you can actually manage a manager, you can kind of move on to your next acquisition a little bit faster. And then you're running your property as a business. At the end of the day, this is a business. You're buying a cash flowing business that is just like opening a well, it's a lot easier than opening a restaurant because you used to have one, but it's just like owning a restaurant or a car dealership or any other kind of business. It's just something that builds on itself over time. And the more time you put in on the front end, a little bit less time every year as you continue to grow. So I think I spent my 2 minutes there. So Nichole, you want to take it back?
Sure. So I have a question, and I would really appreciate everybody kind of weighing in on this who's on the call. I'm actually considering doing another 4-day face-to-face class. I've heard a number of people who talk about not really liking to do all this learning online. And so I'm wondering what people think about that if we were to do something like in November or something like that. Is that something you would be interested in coming to, or are you happy with doing this online? And I would really just appreciate hearing from all of you on this.
You can just
You
unmute
know,
if you want.
can somebody kind of get back to me? I see Wayne nodding his head. So now the next question. So Yemi, Roy, Charlene, Susan. Charlene is on here twice. Would any of you please weigh in on this? I don't want to try and put this together and not have people want to come.
And Charlene says she'd be interested.
Okay. Roy, Yemi. Roy?
Hey guys,
Yeah,
hey guys,
it's
go ahead, Roy.
4 days of class. Is it a in-person class, right? Is it a what's like? Is there a free class or what's the fees for it?
I didn't, did
He's
you,
asking if-
again, I got fuzzy reception, so I didn't quite hear what what you said.
He's asking if the 4-day class is free or there's a charge for it.
No, it's not free. It's not free. It would be, it's actually, because we have to pay for hotel, we have to pay for books, we have to pay for everything. And this is, the Teaching Tuesdays are, our ability to give back, but you would be paying for this.
Yeah. So yeah, would be interested, but depends on what's the cost for it and all depends on those.
Okay, can you tell me, James or Sharon?
Yeah, he says that he'd be interested. It depends on the cost.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be, because it's the other thing, it's probably going to be 10 to 12 hours a day for 4 days. And I see Jane's face, because what did you guys went through it. What did you think, Jane, or Sharon?
So, first off, I think live events are coming back in a pretty good manner. That people are just tired of being on Zoom all the time, and there's not the networking. And obviously, we have a studio, so we're getting the brunt of that a little bit because people just want to be live. So, I think it's a good idea to have a class. We went to your class early on in our investing career, so we were. I think my brain took a little bit to recover, but you know, is as you go on, like we remember things now that didn't make sense then, but now we're like, oh God, that was that. That was what she was talking about back then, or that's what James was talking about when we met him at the wrong Panera Bread or something. I remember that. But you know what I mean? So, I think having a class and no matter where you are in your investing career, you'll get some stuff, you'll get some nuggets that help you along the way that you don't always get on Zoom, because I know for us we get distracted and the dog's running around, the doorbell's ringing, the phone's ringing. I think you're in that classroom and you're meeting other investors that are eventually going to be your partners, or somebody you can bounce some information off of. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
I concur completely. And you get so much information, even if you take the same class or listen to the same class over and over again, because like Jane said, you're in different levels and experiences in your career, in your investing career. So it's a huge opportunity to learn a lot from Nichole, who is like one of the smartest people that has an IQ so high and very smart, and then she explains things and breaks it down for you. It's a no-brainer for me. It's a great class and you learn a lot.
And knowing Nichole, it would be a nominal thing that she could probably charge $15,000 easy for that class, and people would come out in droves. But just I think sometimes people don't want to pay for coaching; they want to take the hard knocks, and not always a good way to go.
You learn from the expert and you do it the right way to begin with, and rinse and repeat, you'll be even more successful.
Yeah, I certainly resembled that remark to begin with when I was doing that. And I stepped on more than one landmine that I could have avoided if I'd have been listening to somebody. But it's so anyway, Yemi, can you and Bally, can you guys and Susan, can I hear from the three of you, please, on this?
Susan responded saying, usually I would say yes, but this year is already full.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Bally?
Hi there. Sorry,
Hi.
I'm just coming in late, so
Okay.
I just catching up, but I have attended before and but always come in late because of work.
Yep.
Yeah, great information, great source. I think the great kind of collaboration, it's like a good mastermind
All right.
group over here.
Let me, if I can, just share a quick story with you. So a couple of years ago, I was helping a couple of people start a meetup down in DC, and a woman came up to me and said, "Hey, I just bought this, little 4 unit up in Charles Village, which is a nice part of Baltimore. Would you mind looking at my deal?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem. Just meet me in my Starbucks up in Ellicott City. We'll sit down, have a cup of coffee. I'll look over your deal." So she comes up, and this was a bright woman. She'd done like 16 or 17 flips, had a high position in the government. So not, a newbie by any means. She had been in the real estate game for a little while. And I looked at her deal for about 5 minutes and I just looked at her and said, "Do you want the truth or you want me to just kind of make you feel good?" And she said, "Tell me the truth." I said, "This is a horrible deal. You need to get rid of this. You need to go back to the woman that sold this to you and said, you need to sell this to somebody else. And, I'll pay you like 1% commission," which is exactly what she ended up doing. She ended up losing about 20 grand. And at the time, the course cost $1,000. She could have saved herself, $19,000 and gone on to bigger and better things. So the fact that Nichole has gone through so many experiences, 25 years of experiences, and is willing to share that with people, all of her experiences, the goods, the bads, and the uglies, I think is a huge value add. And by the way, that person is now a student. So just something to think about.
Yep. No, I've heard a lot of I call them masters. So Nichole is one of them. So when the masters speak, experience speaks, and
Oh,
it's good to be a humble student that time, and because experience and the nits and grinnies that it built into the intuition, they are able to articulate things that, because investing is a big, lot of possibilities. Every deal is different, right? Every deal has a possibility. Especially we're going through this uncertain times right now where industries and sectors are collapsing. Look at office, look at retail.
oh yeah.
The whole behavior, as a group, as a macro group, I usually look at, so I'm like, okay, if we're gonna adapt with time right now, this is the only way. You can't rely on other things. Assets is the only future. We're going back into a time where like the platforms are giving opportunities to us, which wasn't available like 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I also think
And
I really appreciate what you're saying. That I think there is some incredible times coming as things start having to be refinanced at these higher interest rates and people aren't going to be able to do it. So I think there's going to be a lot of properties coming online.
yep, and
I think there's just going to be a lot of opportunity.
yeah,
But
but
you have to know where the
the basics first.
risks are.
Yeah,
Because there's also where there's a lot of opportunity, there's also risk.
yep.
So it is, I think it's something I'm going to think about more. So, in terms of doing something like this and I don't know exactly where this is just I'm just exploring kind of an interest on this.
Yeah.
Um,
No, Nichole, I've heard that you remember this macro analyst and everything. I mean, ultimately our currency is changing. Currency is being diluted.
Yeah, it
to
sure is.
inflation. And if we don't preserve the purchasing power of as even as individuals, as even as families, and all that
Yep.
hard work doesn't pay off. All that hard work of even years of accumulation of hard work, things could be diluted as we put things in cash or something. Cash is still powerful, but it's getting diluted as well.
Well, you can't print
And
all the money we printed without some dilution.
there's more
But the
coming.
other thing is that countries like Saudi Arabia and some of the
Mm.
others have also added. So up until recently, the U.S. dollar was kind of the international currency, but
Yep.
China is coming in, and so I don't know how much longer the U.S. dollar is going to be the only currency either. So
Mhm.
it just I agree with you. I think that being in property right now, income producing property, hedges a lot
Yep.
of bets in a lot of ways.
And yeah, I think that's the best thing because you got the cash flow play and the equity play.
Yep.
Housing is still a challenge, and I think that's where the opportunity is. The gap, provide housing conversions. Actually, a lot of cities and states. I'm in Sacramento right now, and even I've heard like Seattle and a couple other cities that have mandatory said, hey, we are okay with office conversions to put housing in there. So
Yep.
this is like, you heard about California when they said that now you could build your second unit in the backyard now. So these are very loose and regulation that are being loosened up to accommodate all these things, but there's still a shortage. But because the rents are still high,
Yeah, there's
and but
particularly a shortage in affordable housing.
yep. And as you know, Nichole, like the affordability ratio is the main indicator of somebody
Yep.
what to be able to. I used to follow also Bruce Norris. I actually had properties back in 2008, 2002 to 2007, about 4 or 5 houses in Sacramento. And when I saw that 2008 crash, I sold all my properties. If it was 500,000, I'm like 450, take it, let it go, exit, exit out of the bubble, and did a 1031 exchange into hotel. But COVID took me down some challenge.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I think still there's but opportunities with this internet platforms and these online data centers, the data is enough out there that we could do things from anywhere now. I mean, remote work is here. I'm in hospitality. Remote work was a big source of business for hotels. Traveling work, and now people are working on Zoom now. And that cash cow for hotels, like this big, especially the high-rise buildings, not the smaller, these 2, 3 story ones, they are just travel is the only part that's lucrative right now.
Well,
Conventions are,
yeah, one of the things I've always thought is that, and it's really true in commercial as well as residential, is that it is not, you don't see great deals don't come at you most of the time. You have to create the deal. You
that
have to
creative part,
know
yeah.
where the opportunity is and then create the deal from the opportunity. And that's one of the things I think you learn in some of what we teach is how do you
Mm.
find some of those opportunities? How do you create an opportunity that
Yep.
is that can make something a great deal? So
Yeah. I saw that, Nichole, how you explained you kept the fundamentals really clear. That really helped because if without those basic fundamental perspectives, and then you shift on to like, hey, how do we look at the asset? Like, hey, what is the possibility? Like, hey, could this be a care facility? Could this be something else? Like, or some even conversions is basically the name of
yeah,
the game. It looks like it. And for that, you have to be creative thinker, resourceful. And real estate people typically, as you know, in houses, people just want the shiny object. Hey, just me have it ready. Just give me the cap rate. But the funny thing is the opportunities, like you said, is in this creative opportunities, and there are a lot. And I think very few people are focusing on it. Um, but it's I think looks like the only way to go, given the prices of the assets and the interest rates being high. The best way to kind of come through is like to create a big equity and decent cash flow is just a creative way, because nobody else is competing as much on that one as much, because everybody wants everything piece of property that's ready or simple.
Well, certainly the big boys do. And so
Yeah.
they're interested in just kind of having a small cash flow that's dependable. And we can't
Mhm.
compete in that. And so we have to
Yeah.
compete at least I can't compete in that. I have to compete in a realm where I can create some value
And sell
for
it to
me
them.
and investors.
And sell it back to them, because that's
Yep.
what it
Yep.
and that's what
All
it's
right, so we're
wonderful.
going to
Thank you.
take, if I have, there's time for one or two questions. And we'll try and explore a little more whether you want to do kind of a face-to-face class or not. And if there's a way to stream that class at the same time for people who may not be able to travel. But I just think it's so much easier if you're actually there, and we can kind
Yeah.
of do some stuff. So if anybody got any questions about self-storage, you got time for one or two. And then I'm in Dublin flying home tomorrow. So it's pretty late here right now. So I'm going to kind of sign off here in about 5-10 minutes. So any questions anybody has about self-storage?
I never looked at self-storage deals. I might have a question, but it's more of a general question. Try to do a comparison. Let's say for a look at multifamily and maybe hotels. Self-storage is very interesting. I feel like there's been a boom on self-storage because of populations, or is there a bubble in self-storage as well a little bit?
Yeah, it's really popular right now. I'm not quite sure why. It's part of it is that there is it's an asset class that investors like. You can get fairly easily get them funded.
Okay. So funding is easier in self-storage, do you think, than
Funding is much
multifamily?
easier because
Oh, wow.
nationally the foreclosure delinquency rate is less than 5%.
Because
And
there was not too
so,
many, Nichole. Looks like I looked at it for the past 20 years. Not too many people built self-storage, except for, and only the big ones got built. And
yeah,
the
you
smaller
would,
ones, nowhere paying attention to it. But all of a sudden, for the past couple of years, everybody's into alternative assets now, basically. Alternative assets is the name of the game, right? Pretty much. This is, I think, falling also under alternative assets.
well, it's a business. And so you find self-storage listed in real estate sometimes, but you also find it with business brokers. And so
Oh,
it's considered a business a lot, and it is a business. And so you are competing basically on cost and
Yep.
on perceived safety and security. Those are the two biggies for people.
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
is, I
It's
don't
more
have
of
as
a
much.
secure, it's more of a reliable cash flow. It doesn't have much ups and downs. That's
Yeah,
why I think.
that's true. And it is not going to cash flow. The cash on cash return for self-storage is lower than it is for apartments and manufactured housing, but it is stable and predictable a lot of times.
Okay.
So it's easy to find, it's also easier to find investors, I think, in self-storage because people know about it and they kind of like the idea. So, all right,
Okay.
any other questions from anybody?
Thank you. Thank you, Nichole.
All right.
I,
All right, so next week we're going to talk about different kinds of syndications. Because there's 3 or 4 different kinds of ways to approach syndications. meaning how you raise money under various SEC guidelines. And so we're going to talk about we're going to talk a little bit about those. So kind of the, the Reg D, the Reg C, blind pools. We're going to talk about, so we're going to just talk about different kinds of syndications a little bit, just to introduce people to that. All right, I think that I'm going to turn it over to Jane and Sharon. And